Welcome to Living a Sex-Positive Life, where we can guarantee the topic will be about sex. We'll talk about the good and the bad, the health and healing benefits, the adventures, the relationships, as well as the crimes and the tragedies. Our mission is to educate, entertain, and just talk about that touchy subject that affects us all, sex. Now here's your host, Angelique Luna.
Welcome everyone. Good evening. It's Angelique Luna, and I'm here with my co-host and hubby and troublemaker, John C. Luna.
The troublemaker, I love it.
Oh, well, tonight we have a fun, interesting guest. We have the author of Crazy Chick Magnet from Nerd to Freebird, Mr. Xavior Zevon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes. Okay. I saw your bio. I think you would do better justice to it than I would. Please explain who you are and why are we talking today?
Okay. Well, I wrote a book called Crazy Chick Magnet, obviously, and it's autobiographical, not necessarily a full historical reference, but interesting stories. I did start off with a little bit of a bio to kind of give people a grounding as to how I started. And, I was basically just, this sweet, adorable child that kind of grew into this very awkward-looking preteen, I guess you could say. And it was, it was at a time where everybody seemed to be having sex. It was not cool to be a virgin, and I was very much an outsider for a long time because of the way I looked and the fact that I was a virgin and was relatively honest about it. So, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's just like, yeah, I know. Honesty as being a virgin. Wow, that is not the norm, but okay. But I guess yeah, I guess your mom raised you right with values there.
Well, I wasn't a virgin by choice.
I think that was the case for a lot of us guys, some of us guys.
Yeah, but, in the meantime, when I was not getting any, I, formed a deep bond with music. I love music. I was constantly buying music, learning about music on MTV. I kind of became a historian of rock music primarily. But, eventually I kind of came into my own in my late teens and started, getting dates, and that finally actually started having sex. And, at first that was a really weird experience, but, I kind of found my groove, so to say. And the book basically really starts picking up from there, from teenage sexual hijinks, and then moving on into, more serious relationships, but those are sprinkled in between with
the crazies.
Definitely crazies. A lot of crazies. Not every girl I wrote about in the book was crazy, though.
No, it wasn't. I mean, you had a nice blend of everything, so it was sprinkled all through the book. But, there was times I'm just like, I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel so sad. I feel so bad. I'm like, is he going to live? Because this girl could turn into a stalker. To then, I was like, okay, good. He found somebody. And it was just such a fun roller coaster of stories and adventures.
It's been a total roller coaster, and, I'm not dead, so it's not over yet.
Or restraining order, or...
Something like that.
So you wrote it in a unique style of, a unique manner, that all the chapters and all the sections are titles from songs.
Yeah, each chapter is broke up into multiple subcategories, and every one of them has a song title. And a lot of times the song has something specifically to do with the time frame or the actual story. And there's a few where just the song title in itself seemed to kind of blend in with what I was writing about. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. When I was reading that, I was like, okay, wrong era where the song is, but it fits the story.
Right. Yeah. So it's it's definitely an interesting mix, I would say. I would also like to say that we're talking about this before the show started, that if for some crazy reason somebody ever wanted to turn it into a movie, it's got a pre-made soundtrack already built into it, so I was pretty proud of that.
The scary thing is I could see Robert Rodriguez making this because it could go...
Oh, I was thinking Tom Hanks.
No. Especially with some of the crazy chick ones, Robert Rodriguez could really amplify the crazy here. Because I was like scared of some of these girls when he was writing about.
That's true. I kind of thought of it in the vein of Porky's or American Pie or something like that. But I mean, there's definitely a crazy element to it that could definitely go a Robert Rodriguez or a Quentin Tarantino type of turn, I suppose.
Just because of the music and the soundtrack, because that's just how their movies are. And since you already provided the soundtrack there.
Exactly.
So, what was your favorite part writing this book?
Well, I've actively kept a journal for almost 10 years now, and so a lot of it, I wouldn't say it was pre-written because I had to really go and cut the fat like 3 or 4 times over. When I first finished the book, it was like 520 full type-size pages, which probably would have made about 1,000-page book. So
wow,
I really had to go down and just wither it away. And some of the parts, I was like, "Oh, do I really want to get rid of that?" And it's now I know how a director feels when he's editing a movie. But you just cut parts that you love, but you just got to narrow it down. But getting back to the question. My favorite part was writing about the earlier times in my life because that's stuff that I've never written about, and it's some of it's stuff I hadn't even thought about in like a decade or two. So to actually just kind of sit down and relive that, and also kind of have an adult's perspective, looking back at it, it was really very interesting and enlightening, and kind of gave me a better perspective on my youth a little bit, I guess.
Yes, it was very colorful, to say the least.
Yeah, I tried to sprinkle it with as much humor as I could. To be honest, I never ever had an intention of writing a book. It seemed like an interesting thing to do, but it wasn't ever something I thought I would do. And I was actually talking with some work friends, and first of all, I don't really normally talk about, sex with, especially people that I care about. That's just not something that I do. But I have told some of my more interesting stories, minus a few details to some people that I worked with. And finally, one of them was like, "Geez, man, why haven't you written a book?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I guess I just have a little respect for the people that I've been with." And they were like, "Dude, but these stories are so funny. You really need to write a book." And I've always told them that I was a crazy chick magnet. And then they said, "And you've even got your title already. You don't even have to come up with a title." And I thought about it, for a few days, and I was like, I think they're onto something, because I think this really could make a very interesting story. But if I'm going to write about it, I really need to go all the way. But also, if I'm going to do that, I need to, be respectful. So, everybody's name in the book has been changed to, protect the innocent and or not so innocent. And, so that's how I'm kind of protecting everybody yet getting the story out there. And because I don't really talk about my sexual life that much, it was really sometimes uncomfortable actually writing about it. And I'm like, how much detail do I really want to go in here? So I'm hoping it translates well on paper. I think it did, but
it definitely did. It even to the point that I'm like, this book should be used as an example of why we need sex education.
That's probably very true, with at least with a few chapters anyway.
So let me ask you, of all the chapters, and obviously we can't go through your entire book and give it away, what is your favorite or most outlandish crazy chick?
Oh wow.
The one that kind of stands out is, this is the poster board for my poster girl, I guess it would be, not boy, for the Crazy Chick campaign.
Yeah.
That technically could be the book cover girl, because that cover is just amazing. I was just like, ooh, that does scream crazy.
Thank you. I actually did the cover myself. I didn't really trust the publishing company to get the cover right, because I guess they kind of wanted to use stock photos and computer art, and I had a very specific idea in mind. And I talked to several of their artists, and the whole time I was thinking, you know what? Nobody's going to know about this book. It's the cover that's really going to be the first thing that people are going to notice about it. So the cover has to really pop, and the idea came to me almost immediately. And when I finally came to the conclusion that the publishing company just wasn't going to get what I had envisioned, I actually hired a model. I managed to get a hold of some space to do the photography in. I have a relative that's a photographer, and they lent me several pieces of their photography equipment, and kind of gave me a quick rundown on how to use it. And I hired the model, and the posters I made myself in the background, and all the padding I did myself, because if you haven't seen the cover, it's a pretty disturbed looking girl in sexy clothing and a straight jacket, surrounded by all kinds of music paraphernalia, hence the term Crazy Chick Magnet. And I mean, just the photography for doing the cover myself, I mean, that was so interesting. I wound up with probably close to 200 pictures, and I had to weed through all those for the actual cover. But that's how the cover came to be. But that wasn't what you were asking.
Still good content.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be here all hour. The craziest chick. There were definitely a couple that just really passed the realm of psychosis. And I don't recall off the top of my head which one I crowned the craziest, but the one that is probably the most interesting is, and I hate to say this, but I can't remember what I changed her name to.
Do you remember what chapter? Or let's go with the song name. That's how you can find it.
Bear with me just a second here. I've got it right here. I should have had this pulled up. Sorry. Drum roll, please.
No worries.
It's
Just
your
means
first
we're getting
podcast interview.
She was a girl that I had a crush on in high school. The chapter is A Sunday Kind of Woman. This girl, I had a huge crush on her, and she always was in love with the bad boy, and never even noticed me. So in a way, I kind of resented her all these years. And then we kind of became Facebook friends. And one day she posted a picture of herself, and I just sent a casual comment, "Hey, you're looking beyond gorgeous, better than I've ever seen you look." And it was just, I guess, kind of forward, yet it was also kind of innocent. I was just paying her a compliment, and I wasn't expecting anything at all in return. And we started talking, and she was actually dating somebody else from another state. They met online, and they visit each other twice a year, and they've been doing this for 7 years with no plans to do anything else. And I'm like, well, what kind of relationship is that? So I kind of played it cool, but she started acting like she wanted to get close to me. We met up for dinner a couple of times just as friends, and I'm not the most observant guy in the world, but I could definitely see in her eyes that she was interested in something. So one thing led to another, and I was over at her place one day, and let's just say childhood fantasies came true that afternoon, and we were making out, and then before I knew it, she had my fly unzipped and was pulling out what I had, and kind of looked at me and was like, "Can I?" And I'm like, "Well, hell yeah." You don't have to ask me twice.
You're so adorable.
Thank you. But it just turned into just this absolute total sex fest. But what was really crazy about this situation was she had like this double life. I mean, I was like her naughty little secret, yet during the day she was this good Catholic girl, which reminds me of an old John Cougar lyric, which is partially escaping me, but junior high nights on the front porch light, a good Catholic girl during the day. And I mean, that described her quite well, actually. She started really getting kind of weird on me, and she was like, "Okay, well, we can't have sex anymore." And I'm like, "What?" Because I mean, we had some passion like I've just never experienced before, or had at that point. And then like the next day she'd feel guilty and tell me we can't have sex anymore. And then the very next time I went over to visit her, she'd be like, within 5 minutes she couldn't keep her hands off me. And I'm just like, you're really sending confusing vibes. And the whole time I'm like, I can appreciate your religious conviction, but if you're going to come on to me, do not expect me to say no, because this is just too much fun. But eventually she pulled up the strength to go back to her boyfriend from whatever state it was he was in, and her family loved me. I met them a few times, and they were just so thrilled she was dating somebody reasonably local and somebody that treated her nicely. And I mean, this guy that was long distance wasn't even really that good to her, and her family was just so angry with her, and I was pretty pissed too, because I mean, the sex was great, but I mean, I also cared about her, obviously. And then she just decided to go back to an unfulfilling life, I guess, because this guy, apparently they both did not believe in sex before marriage, and they had kind of broken their vows a few times. But I mean, this girl was into some kinky stuff, and I don't think even if they got married, this guy would have been into that. And I mean, I hate to say it, but if they're married now, they're probably very sexually unfulfilled, which is sad. I'm sad for her, but that was her choice. So
there's always something about the innocent ones, or at least the ones who look innocent, that you got to look out for. What was the? I know there's a song about the preacher's daughter, and that's the title's also escaping me, but it is the truth. I grew up in a Catholic household. And, every Sunday was the dress and the look nice and go to church and sit in line and do all that. And I guess that Sunday was just making up for what happened on Saturday night. So,
exactly. I think we're talking about the same chapter, because this chapter is called A Sunday Kind of Woman, which was a Charlie Rich song from the early 70s.
Yeah, chapter 17, yep.
And, I mean, the whole song is about why would a Sunday kind of woman love an everyday man like me. That's the course of the song. So, I'm the everyday man, and she was, the Sunday woman, desperately trying to live that religious life, but, just having desires that she couldn't control.
Well, I think for the younger readers, they got to understand it's much different now. That I mean, I've seen 16, 17-year-olds talk about sex like they're in their 40s. Like, yeah, we just do that. That's okay. It wasn't like that when we were younger. It was nowadays kids wear to school what we would try to sneak out of the house with and change into when we went out on Saturday night. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing the whole societal change on it, which, again, it has its good and its bad points.
Yeah. Well, I was a substitute teacher for 3 years in the Orlando area, so I definitely know a lot about today's youth. But yeah, you're very right. I mean, like I said, when I was in middle school, it was not cool to be a virgin. People talked about it, but it was, still kind of hush hush and hidden from your parents and hidden from your elders. And now kids just, they don't really seem to care who knows what they're doing, which is, I don't know, it's just weird, I guess. Maybe I'm getting old.
I don't know. Just a different time.
Yes. Somebody once asked me what today's kids are like. This was when I was substitute teaching, and I was like, "Well, you remember the Breakfast Club?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I said, "You remember how rebellious Judd Nelson was in that movie?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "He'd be somebody's bitch now."
Absolutely, I could see that, him collared and bitch. Yeah,
Yep.
And somehow I could see Molly Ringwald being that, being the dominatrix of him.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, for some reason, it doesn't sound like the first time I've heard someone thinking about Molly Ringwald with a whip and being a dom. That's definitely a fantasy out there.
No, I think it's because she was. I'm sorry, because she was on whatever that like Freedom Forum Family, ABC Family. Like she was like a strict mom or something. So that's where that image started coming from. So sorry.
I guess I missed that one.
Oh yeah.
I missed that one as well.
Yeah, you guys have been spared because we have a teenage daughter who like forces me to watch. Hey, mommy, let's spend some quality time. Watch my show. I'm like, oh.
Oh yeah. Good times.
Yes, and all your rock concert experiences. So.
Oh yes, I've been to more concerts than I could tell you.
So, which one was your favorite?
Well, most interestingly, my most favorite concert ever, if that statement made any sense whatsoever, was a band called the Fab Four, and they are a Beatles tribute band. And they don't just get out and do the songs. They don't just get out there and dress like the band. They don't just get out there and play the exact same instruments. They have studied the Beatle in which they are playing. And I mean, they've got mannerisms, they've got the way they talk. They do every bit of the music themselves. Nothing is pre-recorded. And they put on a full Beatles experience. And I mean, I'm a bit of an expert on the Beatles, even though they were a little before my time. They broke up about the time I was born. But I read tons of books, watch documentaries, I mean, you name it. So when you go see them, and if you know as much about the Beatles as I do, after like 2 or 3 songs, it's no longer a cover band. I mean, you are watching the Beatles. And I mean, seeing that George and John are gone, it's just an amazing experience that you're just not going to be able to see otherwise. And I've seen several other Beatles tribute bands, and they're good. I could sit and listen to Beatles music all night long, but these guys have just got it down so perfectly. It's crazy.
And those are the guys that perform at a certain local theme park here in Orlando.
Oh, really? I do know that like once every 2 years they do do a couple shows in Florida, and they're so worth checking out. But outside of them, I've seen McCartney. He's, I mean, the greatest song catalog of any artist in history. He's just amazing to see. And I saw Metallica and met Metallica in 1989, and that was an amazing show.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it was the best show I've ever been to, but I actually just drove to New York a few weeks ago to see Billy Squier. because
Oh, nice.
He doesn't tour anymore, and I've been wanting to see him for years, and I know he does an occasional show here and there. So I said, okay, next time he does a show, I don't care where it is, I'm going to go. So he scheduled a show in New York this year, and I grabbed my girlfriend, we got in my car, and we drove 2,000 miles round trip. and we saw Billy Squier. It was pretty awesome.
And so what is he famous for? The name sounds familiar, but I just can't place the song or performance.
His biggest hit was The Stroke, and you would definitely know that song. But he had a lot of other radio hits. Everybody Wants You.
Okay.
Rock Me Tonight. That was a big song. And he's actually been around since the 70s, but he hasn't released a new album since the mid-90s.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been one of my favorites since I was like 11 or 12. So it was really awesome getting to see him. I've been really narrowing my bucket list down. Last year I saw Lorena McKennitt, who's a Celtic singer, and I've been wanting to see her for like 18 years, and she tours the entire world. So she does not necessarily concentrate on the U.S. like a lot of other artists do. She concentrates on the world. So, the U.S. may get 10 or 15 shows out of a tour. So I finally got to see her, and then another was Mike Nesmith of the Monkees. He never tours with the Monkees, but right after Davey passed away, he got back out and toured with the other guys. And I actually went to that show, and that was exceptionally cool as well. And I've been wanting to see The Outfield forever, and I just found out about 6 months ago that the guitarist died about 2 years ago, which pretty much ended the band, so I was very disappointed about that.
Aww.
But, you can't see them all, I guess.
Yeah, that's always the hard part. I know it's like Psychedelic Furs is coming this Friday here in Orlando, and I have like an event to attend, and I'm like, yeah, can I weasel out of it? But I've had this event, like I committed like 3 months ago, and I'm like, because I would love to see them again. I'm big Psychedelic Furs. Any of like those new wave, punk, synth pop. That's my weakness. That's right there. So.
So a few years ago, on New Year's Eve, we got to go see Billy Joel. And It was an absolute awesome concert because at the stroke of midnight, the lead singer of AC/DC came out and sang with him.
Oh, Brian Johnson?
Yep.
Awesome.
So, again, fantastic concert. But then I started going through, and that started a conversation where we were talking about concerts we've seen in the past. And I lived in New York, but I didn't go see a whole lot of concerts, kind of if my friends were going, because I really didn't have a ride anywhere. I'd just go whatever they went. And I started naming a list, and I realized exactly how embarrassing almost it was, because I'm like, oh yeah, Belle Biv DeVoe.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
And he's like a white Italian New Yorker, just to give you perspective on what he's watching. And I'm like looking, because that's something I would be, because I'm Mexican.
I'm going through, let's see, MC Hammer.
Yeah, I saw them. Yeah, I'm willing to, but.
And I started going through the list, and I'm like, I really just saw the concerts of the music. The people my friends were going to see. I'm like, I'm not sure I really liked all that music.
Right, yeah.
Milli Vanilli.
I have to agree with you. I don't like it either. But Billy Joel, that was actually my second concert. My grandmother actually took me to that one. And she liked Billy Joel. And that was the Innocent Man tour. And then about a year later, she took me to see Hall & Oates. And the really funny thing about that is when I saw Billy Squier the other week, he was playing with G.E. Smith, who was the lead guitarist for Hall & Oates on all their biggest hits, and he was also the Saturday Night Live band leader of the 90s. So whenever Saturday Night Live panned out to a commercial, you would see his face. Anyway, when my grandmother took me to see Hall & Oates, I was in 8th grade, and she picked me up from the school. I got in the car, and she had this plastic bag, and she kept shaking it, and I'm like, Grandma, what the hell do you have here? And she lifted it up, and it was a plastic bag full of yard trimmings. And I I was like, what on earth do you have? And she said, I've got the grass. Come on, let's go to the concert.
Go Granny!
Yeah. So I had I got to meet G.E. Smith after the show. Billy didn't come out, unfortunately, but I told him that story, and he just about fell off the stage. So it was really awesome that I got to share that with him. And actually, my grandmother's still alive, so I told her about it a couple of days later. She had completely forgotten that story, but she was absolutely tickled pink that, somebody involved in that actually knows the story now.
Well, everyone knows the story because it's in the book. It's like the first couple of chapters.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that was in the book. So.
Yeah. Oh, you forgot. That, and you get your, what was it, king and queen dance clothing style from Billy Joel, and everyone's like, oh, no, you're supposed to wear dress shoes. And I'm like, no, he looks cool.
I thought I looked cool. I actually found the picture not too long ago, and I'm like, I did look pretty cool. I was ahead of my time. That's the thing.
Definitely. You need to post that up on the Facebook group so that way they could see. It's like, yeah, chapter 3, this is where it is. So
absolutely.
That was hysterical. But that's kind of funny. Like, your grandma's like, oh, yeah, really?
She forgot all about it, but I mean, she turns 90 in 2 months, so, I'll cut her some slack.
Well, to have a grandparent to take you to concerts is just plain awesome.
Oh, yeah. In fact, she refused to sit in our seats for the Hall & Oates concert, so, we found the closest open seats that we could find and sat in it till somebody else was like, hey, you're in our seats, and we did that like 20 times. So finally I was like, Grandma, could we please take our own seats?
Well, if we're sharing concert stories, what was it? It was 1992. Guns N' Roses, Faith No More, Metallica were touring together.
Oh, I remember that tour, yes.
And I got to go, and I just remember on it was my younger brother's birthday coming up. And I went ahead and bought an extra ticket and said, this is your birthday present, you're going. So I took him, and the whole time I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great. At that time, he definitely was, but I know I was very straight-laced. He was just turned 16, and we were in the center of the biggest cloud of burning weed I had ever encountered in my life. And I remember rocking out to the music going, I'd better enjoy this concert because we're going home smelling like this. I don't even live with my parents anymore. I know I'm going to be punished.
Nice.
So I think on the way home we stopped off and bought some, what was it, the spray deodorant, and tried to spray it off, drop my brother off. I think my parents were luckily asleep at the time, and just got out of there.
Very nice.
So wait a minute, we got off topic. We went straight to concerts instead of the sex in the book because, we're a sex show.
Oh.
It's like, I can't remember. Did you have sex at a concert? If we're going to keep talking about concerts.
Have I had sex at a concert? I have not, but, that may have been something to do when I was a little younger. Actually, it's not in the book, but I had sex in the movie theater for the first time, like a few years ago, seeing the newest Star Wars movie, and right before Han Solo got pierced with a lightsaber, I was piercing somebody with my own lightsaber.
Well, that's one way to make it a memorable moment.
It was definitely memorable
for such a almost historical film.
Yeah, I thought seeing Return of the Jedi on the day that it opened was, something to remember, but I think this might have topped it just a little bit.
Just a little at that point, because, Star Wars is kind of a historical thing for most sci-fi geeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think of movie theaters that you can still do that in because...
Well, nowadays, they have, recliner seats that you could actually pull out, recline, and watch a movie, have food and drinks and wine, so... I think nowadays it's even easier than it was back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And Now the movie theaters actually have bars, so at least you have something to blame it on if you get caught.
Right, exactly. And even the dine-in theaters, like at AMC, they have enough room in between your food and you that, get a nice little cozy spot. Yeah.
Just need, damn, I never thought of it. Now I got to look and see if they actually have tablecloths. That could be a good place to hide.
Mm-hmm. Or with me, always constantly bringing a blanket or a sweatshirt. Hey, they wouldn't know the difference. I'm just cold.
Absolutely. Well, kind of lucky. The movie had already been out for, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months. So the theater was, there weren't that many people in there. So, we just took a few seats in the back and, it wasn't even something pre-planned. It just sort of happened.
That's always the best time.
I recommend it. So I was just kind of thumbing through my book trying to find something, worth mentioning that, doesn't take an hour to talk about. But there was another funny story, and I think I posted an excerpt from this on my Facebook page, but I think I mentioned that I have several degrees, more than any one human should have, but for my last degree, I was going to school with much younger people. I was in my 40s, and they were all, in their early 20s, probably at the oldest for the most part. And there was this one girl who just happened to be a lesbian in one of my classes, and she was a nice girl, always talking to me. I wasn't exactly sure what her interest was, but, I talked to her, and, we got along and became Facebook friends. And I think right around the time I finished the program that I was going to school for, she invited me to a burlesque show, and I was like, sure, yeah, no problem. I'm all about the burlesque. So we went, and she didn't tell me it was at a predominantly gay bar, which is really not that big of a deal. I've never actually been to one, but I didn't really have any issues with going. But I'm not really a club person to begin with, because I don't really drink, and I'm a little bit of an introvert, or actually I'm a lot of an introvert, but I'll talk if you come up and talk to me, but just walking up to a stranger in a bar has never been really my forte. But so here I am in this predominantly gay bar with this girl, and the burlesque show didn't start for like an hour and a half when we got there, and she started drinking and was floating all around, and before I knew it, she was making out with a girl and that she had never met before. And then we walked off, and she got another drink, and the next thing I know, she's talking to some other girls and making out with them, and I'm like, fuck. Maybe that'd be easy for me. Maybe I should be a lesbian. I don't know. It looks like a pretty nice gig.
Was she a lesbian, or was she bisexual?
I was under the impression she was, a full lesbian, and it's cool. I'm all for everybody being with, who they want and being happy, and equal rights for everybody, and all that good stuff. But then the burlesque show started, and that was the only time I had a good time the entire time I was there. The rest of the time I was just kind of standing by myself while she was off making out with every other girl she came across, and like I said, that's all cool. I enjoyed watching. It was all good. But after the burlesque show, I waited a little bit longer, and things weren't becoming any more fun for me. So I finally mentioned, hey, I think I'm ready to go. Do you want to leave with me, or you want to get a ride with somebody else? And she was like, no, I'm good to go. And so I was like, all right, cool. So we start to leave, and I turn around, and she started talking to this other girl as we're walking out, and then the next thing I know, they're making out. I'm like, damn, this girl's made out with like at least 4 people since we've been here, and I've made out with nobody, so this is really sad. But then we get out to my car, and we're about to go, and she starts telling me, damn, I'm really horny, and the whole time I'm thinking, well, know how you feel. I'm not exactly sure why you're telling me. And then she, asked me if she could see my junk, and I was like, well, sure, I guess. And I whipped it out, and I mean, we're still in the car. And then she was like, can I touch it? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, you don't have to ask, really. It's out in the open. And next thing I know, she started going down on me. And I mean, here I am in my 40s. She's in her early to mid 20s and a lesbian. And I'm like, well, shit, I'm scoring tonight, something big. So we went to, a secluded, dark area of town. It was a park, and parked under some trees. And she wanted, full on sex, but I didn't bring any condoms, because I mean, I was hanging out with a lesbian. Why a condom,
Got to pull that Boy Scout thing. You always got to be prepared.
Well, I guess, it just never dawned on me, A, with the age gap, and B, the fact that, most lesbians aren't into guys. So we didn't actually, do it, but we just, kind of had some fun in the car with, mouths and fingers and whatnot, and it was a good time. And and actually she offered to, have us go to the store and get some condoms, and for whatever reason, I don't know. I don't know if I felt guilty. I mean, she had a few drinks in her, but she was far from, drunk, so I wasn't taking advantage of her. But for some reason, I don't know, I didn't feel like it was good to go any further, and I guess I put the brakes on it there and took her home. But it could have gone further. I guess it could have been a more interesting story in the end. But I respect women, so it just didn't feel right beyond what we had done, and there you have it.
Well, I gotta ask, have you seen her after that night?
Yeah, actually, we continued to be friends on Facebook for a while, and I kind of moved away from the area, so contact got less and less, and I guess sometime in the last year or two, she was probably weeding out people she hasn't talked to that much, and I guess I wound up being one of those, and so she's off living her life somewhere, and I hope she's happy.
That's the one thing about Facebook. I find people come out of the woodwork and every so often and send messages where I'm like, oh God, I haven't thought of you in 20 years. Yeah. And well, I know my youth wasn't that exciting. It got more exciting in my 30s. But I know plenty of people who do the same thing. They're like, oh my God, did I sleep with them?
Oh, no. Mine's is always worse. It's like when you're been around a big circle of people and friends, it's like, wait a minute, did I sleep with you or did my brother sleep with you? I can't remember. And then sometimes I had to say neither, because I know how much of the both of you are, that you're like, wham, bam, thank you, man. And I like our mutual respectful situation. But, it does get comical sometimes, even when you have children, because we had a situation where our daughter went to elementary school, and so she said, our name, and then the teacher's like, wait a minute, is your father John? And our daughter's like, yeah? It's like, I went to college with him. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That totally freaked us out.
Right.
Now, thankfully, we never had a relationship. My daughter's old teacher, but she was actually the roommate of someone I had a relationship with. So thankfully, she kept all the stories to herself.
Definitely. Well, I found that Facebook has been, very beneficial in, progressing relationships. In fact, my current girlfriend, I've known her since 7th grade. We got reconnected on Facebook, and we've been together for a few years now, which was interesting because I was just finishing the book when she and I hooked up, and I kind of added a little something about her at the end when the book originally ended. I'm just continuing to live the single life and whatnot, but I've had a few relationships where Facebook actually really just massively threw wrenches in everything. In fact, it's even caused several arguments with my current girlfriend. Just, the wrong comment or liking the wrong thing on Facebook, and it's just like, why would you talk to her, or why would you like that? It's sometimes I'm just like, geez, why don't I just shut Facebook down altogether, and just not even have these problems? But we're all adults, and we've got to, I police myself on Facebook way more than I used to, but it's just weird how it can bring you together yet really do some damage if you're not careful.
Well, one thing we're still trying to stress to our child is that when a picture goes up on Facebook or any social media, it's there forever.
Yep.
And there was a commercial not that long ago where a kid's in there with an interview, and it's like, it's good to be honest, but not that honest, I think was the title of it. And he's going through the Facebook, he's like, yeah, hear of me being drunk at this place, and hear of me passed out being in this place, and I think I was in the gutter at that place, but that was okay. That was a holiday weekend. Right. And started laughing. I'm like, no. That actually does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep, it does. And it makes me wonder how, society's going to have to change to some degree and cut people some slack, because at some point, people we're going to have adults that have grown up with social media, and, every stupid thing they've ever done is going to be there for everybody to see. We at our age have the benefit of being able to have done all the stupid shit that we've ever done without necessarily having to announce it to the entire world,
Amen.
Or someone else taking video of it and then posting it on there, because that's always, because I see that all the time there when I go to events and parties, that someone else is recording. And you're like, no.
Well, at least when we grew up, video cameras were fairly large. And the worst thing we had to deal with were those disposable Instamatic cameras. Those were the popular ones. And nowadays, everyone's got a video.
Yep, they do.
But, cool.
Now, you really don't go into a lot of details about sex, but you were traditional vanilla sex, or did you do some BDSM kinky sex, or, you were very vague about that. I want details.
I wouldn't say that I've ever been tied up, but, I'm very much into anal sex with my partners if they're into it, not necessarily on me, but I like to go there on them. I guess that's my deep dark fetish, I suppose. But I'm very oral. I love oral giving and receiving, and there's pretty much nowhere I don't go with that. And I'm not sure how else to answer that.
No worries, just truthfully.
Yeah, truthfully, because I know it's like... No, I'm intrigued because it's like you said, one of your girlfriends, the only thing she knew how to do was missionary, and that's it, so I was just like...
Oh, yeah, that was the first girl I ever had sex with, and even after... I don't know. I had seen enough porn before I started having sex. I don't know if that ruined it for me or not, but the first girl I had sex with, when we were done, I remember just driving home thinking, I don't get what the big deal is. It wasn't that great. And I actually had a couple of other partners before I came across, the first girl that I had mind-blowing sex with. And sex was cool, sex was fun, it was naughty, it was a good time as a teenager. It's still all that now, but, back then, you technically weren't allowed to be doing it even by law. So I guess that put an extra element of kinkiness to it. But, the first several girls I was with, it just was nothing all that exciting. And, the girls I was with had been around a bit, excuse me. So you'd think that they would be a little more interesting, but I guess they just hadn't learned too much.
Well, quantity does not speak for quality,
It
but
really doesn't. It really doesn't, and I don't know if a lot of people understand that. But the first girl I had mind blowing sex with, I mean, she was just absolutely fearless, and she was in the Night Ranger chapter. I think it was called Let Him Run, and there were so many other interesting things going on in my teenage life at that moment. I mean, I was still. I had just graduated high school, and I was wrapping up the lease of my first apartment, so I was actually living on my own before I even graduated. And, I mean, there were just wild parties there all the time, and my friends were just in a constant state of being in a drunken stupor. They never really drank until I got my apartment, and then I guess now that they had once they had the place to do it, it gave them a license to just drink all the time. And so me and this girl started seeing each other, and she actually pretty much started living with me right after we did it the first time. And you know, we'd be in my room having sex, and there'd be like a party going on right outside my door. Lots of funny stories in that chapter from that time period.
Oh yeah, that had a couple of stories that I'm like, that could technically be a restraining order. That is totally illegal, and I can't believe he survived.
Yeah,
well,
I feel that way myself too, I suppose.
it also sounded very familiar. When I was a freshman in college, I joined a fraternity. And it wasn't a very high-class fraternity. You know, let's say low-class. We just weren't rich, put it that way. So, yeah, the space, everything was closed off, and sometimes there was a party going outside the door, and, you know, you got your space where you could. But I think that's kind of what made it not just exciting, though, but made it so young sex being rushed. Because going back towards high school, I never had a place to have sex. So every time there was sex, it was the thought in your head of parents walking in.
Right.
Or something like that. And that, you know, that between the anxiety of that and then being your first or second time doing it, it was like it was over before you knew it. And I agree with you. You said, what the hell just happened? It's over? That was so anticlimactic.
I don't know. I've been the exact opposite. I mean, as far back as I can remember, I have never been a wham bam thank you ma'am, and sometimes it's not even by choice really. I mean, you know, once I'm in for the long haul. I mean, there's no such thing as a quickie for me, which is, you know,
A great plug, but a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a quickie is like 20-25 minutes, you know. So, yeah, it's just. I hear about, you know, these guys that, you know, once they're in, they're done. And I'm like, how the hell does that even happen? I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how that happens.
Oh, it does. The 7-second guy. Oh, I've had situations like that. I kind of I'm like, dude, I haven't even warmed up and you are done?
Right, exactly.
Oh.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I'm so far the opposite. I can't even relate to that. I don't know even what to say about it.
Usually my condolences is always a good one.
Right, yeah. What's funny though is I've actually been to a doctor about it, and there's all kinds of remedies for those who have premature ejaculation, but for those that, you know, it takes 30 minutes to an hour to be able to finish the deal, there's nothing out there for you.
Other than go to the emergency room with Viagra.
Luckily, I'm getting old, but I'm not old enough to where I've needed that so far, so I'm thankful for that.
Awesome. So where can everyone find you? Because our time is up. It's been a wonderful experience.
Oh, I've had a great time. I can be found in a number of places. I have a Twitter page, which is under Crazy Chick Magnet. I also have a blog, which is under the Blogger website, under the same name, Crazy Chick Magnet. Facebook. I'm not on Instagram or I guess any of those others. For somebody like me who's not very technically savvy, having three sites is pretty extensive, I suppose.
Well, where is your book available?
It is available on iUniverse, which is the publisher. It's also available on Amazon and online for Barnes and Noble. All those places you can get it hardcover, paperback, and it's also in the electronic format.
Yep. Well, thanks for being on the show. You can find me everywhere on social media and the website Living a Sex Positive Life. I also like to thank our sponsor, The Woodshed Orlando.
And you can find me as John C. Luna on Facebook, Twitter, FetLife. Drop in and drop a line and say hi.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
We'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.